Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Borden Sports Media NFL podcast. And boy, this is going to feel weird to say. I can't say that I'm coming to you at the end of a week of something because there's nothing for it to be the end of the week of. Super Bowl's over, off season's officially in full swing, with news that we'll be discussing later on. But yeah, it just feels weird not to have a whole week of action, or indeed a whole game of action to talk about on this podcast. But don't worry, we still have plenty to talk about, and we will be getting into that later on. But first, before we do that, some things may have changed, but some things do still stay the same. I do need to start off this podcast by saying thank you very much and doing the admin, which is as simple as saying thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, you are listening to this on YouTube, so feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, do everything you need to do to be part of the conversation. Leave a comment. Keep the show growing as we continue through the off season. Don't forget to follow us on our other social medias as well. We are at Baldwin Sports Media on Instagram and TikTok, and we are at MRB Sports Media on Twitter. So feel free to give us a follow or like or subscribe or whatever it is that you need to do on those relevant platforms. And if you are a returning listener, then as always, thank you for continuing to stick with me even as we go through the off season. Right, and the off-season for some teams has started pretty much straight away because I need to start off with our first story, and that's the news that the Miami Dolphins are clearing house. I think is the easiest way to say, because they have made a couple of big roster moves in an attempt to clear salary cap, and as I always urge every team to do whenever a new coach is appointed, then give that new head coach the chance to set the team up in his own image. If that means trading away players to get more draft picks, or if it means clearing as much salary cap as you can to make way for free agents or whatever, then do what you can do within your within your limitations. Some players may carry dead cap hits and whatever, but do whenever a new coach comes in, as Jeff Hafley has done for the Dolphins, do whatever you can to give him as much of an opportunity to make this their team. And they've done that because they have released, or are in the process of releasing, depending on various stages, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, James Daniels, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that, but Ikhine, I don't know how it goes. Obviously, Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill are the two big names there. Bradley Chubb, I think that's going to be a pretty good signing for whoever decides to pick him up. Obviously, a veteran in the league, formerly of the Denver Broncos. I think he's got a lot of potential still to produce for whichever team wants to bring him in. 8.5 sacks last year. This is after coming off an injury. That's not really a bad return for them. So, someone's going to be very, very happy when they sign him. But the biggest name, obviously, is Tyreek Hill. And it's going to be very interesting to see how he is evaluated, let's put it that way, by many people throughout the league. Because this is not the Tyreek Hill that we saw in Kansas City. When he was in Kansas City, there was the argument could be made that he was the best wide receiver in the league. Whether or not he was is up for debate, whatever, but he was certainly in the discussion of the best wide receivers in the league, maybe even the best player in the league. And even in the early stages of his time with the Dolphins, he was getting 1,700 yards back-to-back seasons, 20 touchdowns in his first 2 years. Plenty of promise there that the Dolphins had made the right move in trading for him. But the past 2 years have not been the same. You look at 2024 was his first time in first time in 5 years that he finished under 1,000 yards. This is with playing full season, and then obviously last year he picked up an ACL injury. So is he effectively damaged goods for the Miami Dolphins? Well, clearly he's damaged goods for the Miami Dolphins because they got rid of him, but is he damaged goods for the rest of the league? Are his days as a number one wide receiver over? I honestly think they are. I think when you look at what he has done, his age, he's now 31. He will be 32 by the time the next season comes around. There may be one, maybe two teams that will look at him and think he's a number one wide receiver, but honestly, I think he's going to be more suited to being a very, very serious number 2 threat. I think if you pair him off alongside, for the sake of argument, Jackson Smith and Jigba, say in Seattle, having Jigba as the 1, then have Tyreek Hill as the 2. That's going to cause a lot of problems. In LA, Puka Nacua as the 1, Tyreek Hill as the 2. I think that would cause a lot of problems in the NFC West. If he wants to take a stab at maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, DK Metcalf as a 1, Tyreek Hill as a 2. You're not telling me that's not a pretty good, promising wide receiver tandem? I think that is probably going to be what he's going to have to aim for when he chooses his team. There may be some team out there that wants to make him a number 1 wide receiver, but I honestly think his skill set and his age and whatever is going to be more suited to being a number 2. Work with a team where they have an established number 1. They're going to pay a lot of attention to him, and then pick up your yards here or there as a number 2. I think that's pretty much where he's going to be. Now, that's not the only Miami Dolphin he's now an ex-Miami Dolphin, that faces an uncertain future. The other one is Tua Tagovailoa, with some reports and some suggestions coming out today that he's going to be released as well. Now, this is where I said earlier, they're in the stages of cutting, because Mike Florio was saying on PFTPM this afternoon that he thinks Tua Tagovailoa is going to be listed as, he's going to be cut later, but designated as a post-June 1st cut so that they can spread the salary cap around a bit and take the hit. Or maybe they pull a Brock Osweiler trade and convince someone to take Tyreek Hill off them, and they'd have to offer up a pretty good draft pick to go and get it. I think that's probably going to be the likelihood for them as well. Again, Jeff Hafley coming in, he wants to have his team done the way he wants it to be done. Now, I know he's defensive, he's from the defensive side of the ball. He was the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. But I think he probably wants to have his own quarterback. He's not a quarterback whisperer. He may want to pass the responsibilities on to someone else, say. But I think given the state of Tua Tagovailoa and where he is in his career, what he's shown, the flashes, I think will probably make some team want to pick him up, maybe as a number 2 quarterback. Maybe probably need to be somewhere where there's a left-handed quarterback, which off the top of my head, I think is only Michael Penix Jr. in Atlanta. I think is the only one. I'm just running through my head right now quickly. I think I think that he's going to be the only left-handed starting quarterback in the NFL next season. Just give me one more chance to go through. Yeah, I think he's the only one. So maybe he's a backup to Michael Penix in Atlanta, because the belief is that, and the reports coming out, that Kirk Cousins is going to be released by the Falcons. So maybe make that an interesting quarterback battle. That's a solid number 2 backup quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons if Tua Tagovailoa is willing to be a number 2. Maybe he comes in. Maybe Michael Penix still needs a bit more, learning, bridge quarterback to learn from. Maybe have Tua as the starter, come in as a 1-year deal, and then maybe move towards Michael Penix Jr. later on. So I think he does have a future, but the options, especially when you look at who already has their starting quarterback in place and their franchise quarterback in place, it's going to be slim pickings, but I certainly think there will be a team out there that is willing to give him a chance. So that's why I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to end up moving forward. Story number 2, and obviously with this being the off-season, we can sort of cycle through these a little bit quicker. So today's podcast is going to be a little bit shorter, but we'll see how it goes. I'm only 10 minutes into recording this. But anyway, on to our next topic, and this concerns something I'm pretty sure I addressed last year. Yeah, I'm 99% sure I addressed this last year, and the controversy surrounding. But this is the NFLPA player survey cards that go around, and the controversy surrounding them, that now they're not going to be made available to the public. As obviously, everyone hears, the story comes around once a year. The NFLPA, the Players Association, sends out surveys, and players are asked to rate certain things on the team, the training facility, the head coaching, the management, I think one of them is like how they treat families, so like all that sort of stuff, stadium, all just various aspects of the franchise, and then it gets made public, and basically teams getting humiliated, and then you find out the Green Bay Packers. I'm just making up words here. The Green Bay Packers, everyone hates the training facility because it has a bad smell or whatever, things along those lines. And then the Miami Dolphins have the best care for families in the NFL because they provide a buffet for the families or whatever when they're watching the games. Stuff like that happens. And of course, the NFL feels that maybe this is being somewhat humiliating for the teams when it comes out that the team isn't doing well in this area. So what they're doing is the surveys look as if they're still going ahead, but they're not going to be made public. Now, I have two problems with this. The big one is, and I think this is a comparison I made last year, and I'm going to sound like Randy Marsh here, but I'm sorry, I thought this was America. Like, is this not what freedom of speech is? Do players not have the rights to say, hey, I don't like this, make it public, and then effectively force the owners into doing something? Like, hey, our training facility is terrible. Upgrade it, and then who knows, you may be able to get more free agents. Or hey, we we like the team culture or whatever, or the locker room is the best, whatever. It's really spacious, it's high tech, whatever. That's going to get more free agents to come to us because that may be something that they like. All these things, like, surely you want this information out there to affect change and to make your product better. As the owners, I don't see where stifling the opinions of players is going to get you, but that's the main one. The second one is, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to stay anonymous or kept away from the public forever, because someone will find out, and the amount of people that are involved, it will get leaked eventually. Just details like this can't stay away forever. If everything gets kept within the facilities, there will be someone that will leak, because this is how the NFL works. Adam Schefter has his sources within various teams: Ian Rappaport, Albert Breer, Jay Glazer, Peter Schrager, Diana Rossini, brilliant insiders, all have their connections and all have their people. It will be leaked to someone that, okay, the survey will take place, it will go back to the clubs, it'll go back to the franchises, and then they'll see it. Maybe it'll be handed out in a team meeting somewhere. There'll be a big conference in the stadiums, and the owner will say, okay, we got an A here, we got a B here, we got an F here, we got a C here, whatever. Someone's going to leak that information out. Someone will go to Diana Rossini and say, oh, the Dolphins got graded F at a training as a training facility. Then what happens? Then you've just defeated the whole purpose, and only some details are going to come out. Maybe all the details are going to come out. Then this just makes the whole thing pointless. It is one of these things. I just think they should want to have it above board, and where everyone can see it. We've seen ex-players come out and JJ Watt's been very vocal that he wants this stuff made public. A whole bunch of players, I'm sure, want this stuff made public as well, again, because they want to be able to hold teams and franchises to account. If something is bad, let's get it fixed. If something is good, let's advertise it. The whole thing about the San Francisco 49ers and that the training facility being next to some electrical power station or whatever. Like, does that really have an impact on what's going on? Does that really impact free agents that they may have wanted to sign? Maybe someone said, okay, I want to sign with you, but I'm a bit worried about that electrical substation. I'm going to grade this as an F as a way to warn off other people, and then I'm not going to sign with you as well. Maybe that's the thing. Again, this is stuff that needs to be above board and let the public and the rest of the NFL know exactly what is going on. Again, for the good of the league more than anything. Let me know what you think. Do you think this stuff should be above board, or do you think it would be much better kept inside, behind closed doors, and just, for owners' eyes only? Let me know what you think. Now, on to topic number 3, and in this third section, this is where I usually go around the league and just break down the games very quickly. Obviously, there's no games to go around, but there is one way to go around the league, and that's with this list that I found very interesting. It's from Fox Sports NFL writer Ralph Vacchiano. Again, sorry for butchering that name, but he's come up with his top 10 coaching hot seats. And I just want to go through where I think he may or may not have gone wrong. I actually quite like the list, to be fair, but there are just one or two little issues that I have with him. So I'll go from 10 to 1. Yeah, 10 to 1. I'll go with 10 to 1. So number 10, he's got Brian Schottenheimer for the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's a very interesting one. I think the Cowboys, if you looked at, have been stagnating for the past couple of years. And we know what Jerry Jones is like when it comes to wanting success. He is not scared generally to make that quick decision, especially in recent years. He will get rid of someone if he thinks that there's not much progress. So Brian Schottenheimer, still relatively new in the job, but if things don't go right, then there may be a few problems here. It's going to be interesting. 3 of these, by the way, are in the NFC East. So that just sort of gives you a hint. You know where things are going to go because there's no way Jim, I always get them confused. John Harbaugh is going to be on the hot seat this year. So 3 of these teams are in the NFC East, and you know which one's going to be. But where do they come? We'll go through it. Number 9, he's gone for Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. Now, I think this is, again, another situation possibly like the Buffalo Bills with Sean McDermott, that we can see that there is clearly a lot of good with the Green Bay Packers. Constantly in the playoffs, have done well with Matt LaFleur as their head coach. Managed to make that transition from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, franchise level quarterbacks, perfectly. But there has to be success somewhere. Do I think this would be the year if things don't go well? I think it would be tough. I think it's one of those. At what point does a bad season come into it? Because if they're 10-6 or 10-7 rather, make the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game and then don't get too far, would that be enough to fire him? I don't think so. Missing the playoffs, maybe, I'm not sure. 3-14. Big injuries aside, if they lose Micah Parsons and Jordan Love, then maybe. If it's through bad performances, then probably. But if it's through injury, then you probably want to give him a pass. So, bit of an interesting one, but I don't see Matt LaFleur I don't see him on the hot seat personally. I think there are more. He's number 9 on the list. There are people above him, but even in a normal world, I don't see Matt LaFleur on the hot seat. Dan Quinn with the Washington Commanders, again, I think this is one of those. If you see some progress there, if they make the playoffs, if Jaden Daniels gets back to what he was, I don't think this is really a conversation because I think they will be in and around that playoff spot. If it's a bad season, if it's 4-13, 5-12, then possibly, yeah, because you probably would have expected more out of Dan Quinn. But a good season, not necessarily a great season, but a good season, I think is still, it's still enough to keep him, personally. Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings comes in at number 7. I'm just like, these are all NFC teams so far. Just coincidence, I'm sure. But yeah, Kevin O'Connell, a lot of it is going to depend on the quarterback situation, what they decide to do. If JJ McCarthy makes progress, if JJ McCarthy plays, but if JJ McCarthy is making progress, I think that will be enough for Kevin O'Connell to stay in his job. I think a losing season won't be bad. Again, a narrow losing season, an 8-9, 7-10, I don't think would lead to a firing, so long as JJ McCarthy is moving forward and showing why he is, why they chose him to be the franchise quarterback. I think that's going to be the key thing that guides the Minnesota Vikings in their decision with Kevin O'Connell this season. Pretty much a similar situation with who is in at number 6, Shane Steichen. I think, again, a lot of it is going to be around the quarterback situation. What's going to happen with Daniel Jones? What's going to happen with Anthony Richardson? If they start off the way they did, again, a lot of it was just unfortunate. They were one of the best teams in the AFC last year until they started running into, quarterback problems. Then they fell off, 1-2 more wins. They may have, been fighting for a playoff spot. Just bad luck that they ended up having to go to Phillip Rivers at the end. So I don't really hold that against Shane Steichen, but you can see the level of progression. You can see there's some movement there. So again, a 3-14 season, maybe. I think that's fair. 8-9, all things being fair, again, as long as there's good move with the quarterback situation, maybe Anthony Richardson takes a step forward, maybe he comes in, maybe Daniel Jones gets injured, Anthony Richardson takes over and says, okay, I'm going to be the franchise quarterback now and show something, then yeah, I think he can stick around. So a lot of it, there are a lot of extenuating factors in all of these decisions. I don't think it's going to be, one way or the other, they're gone. Next up, we have Zach Taylor with the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is another one that a lot of it's going to depend on health and Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow stays healthy for the whole season, the Cincinnati Bengals rather will have a good year. They will be 10-7, 11-6. They have the ability to do it. As long as they can protect Joe Burrow, keep him upright, keep him healthy, they are arguably one of the best teams in the whole of the AFC. So I don't think Zach Taylor is in trouble. I think even if they do, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, I think they're going to be okay. Making the playoffs out in the first round, I think is still good enough to keep him the job. Missing the playoffs, though, then you start to wonder, okay, what are we doing here? We have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow. We need to do something. So I think that's gonna be a lot. That's gonna be a lot of what makes their decision up. Dave Canales with the Carolina Panthers coming in at number 4, which I think is slightly harsh because some improvement. Winning the division is a good thing. I don't think it merits a playoff berth necessarily if you go in with a losing record, but whatever, they got a playoff game. And with Bryce Young, you can start to see there is something there. Again, if he continues to make progress and they're in and around that mark, I don't think that's gonna hold them off, especially if the NFC South continues to be the dumpster fire that it is and that it has been the past few years. There's a chance for him to, fail his way forward, shall we say. That, again, just a good season, maybe enough to keep him in the job. Number 3, you have Todd Bowles. Similar situation. NFC South being the dumpster fire that it is. There's a chance for you to fail forward there. A 9-8 season could win you the division. But with Baker Mayfield and with Mike Evans looking as if he's going to return, and all the other weapons that they have, like Chris Colbert, they have a lot of firepower there to make it work. I don't think they see themselves. I don't think they even see themselves as one of the best teams in the NFC, so I don't think the expectations are that high. But if they get a winning season, I don't see why that should be fireable. If there's a losing season, again, a middling losing season, 8, 9, 7, 10, I don't think that should be enough to fire Todd Bowles. But a bad losing season, then yes, I think that's probably safe enough. But I don't think they're going to be in that window just yet. I'm going to skip to number 1, which is Aaron Glenn. I think that's fair. When you have the season that the New York Jets had, a defensive-minded coach, not recording a single interception, that is on you. You've got to do a lot to get back in a lot of people's good graces after that. So if they have another Jets-like season, I can definitely see Aaron Glenn being on the chopping block there and probably being replaced by someone who was on this list who gets replaced. If Kevin O'Connell goes and Aaron Glenn go, I can see Kevin O'Connell stepping immediately into that job and wanting to reignite the offense and the whole franchise of the Jets. But the interesting one is Nick Sirianni. Now, I've said this before and I've said I do not get the hate around Nick Sirianni and the Eagles. What he has done for that franchise, I don't see why, again, it's a fireable offense. Yes, a 3-14 season, absolutely. Go and fire him. That would be absolutely deserved. But in general, you look at what he's done. Nothing but winning seasons, playoffs every year, a winning record in the playoffs of 6-4, 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 Super Bowl win. What more can you ask for him to do? He's clearly got a winning culture there. I don't see how one bad season gets you fired like that. I know the Philadelphia is a hostile crowd and they make their feelings known, and there's some weird split in the Eagles fan base. But what are you doing if you're talking about Nick Sirianni being on the hot seat if he has a bad season after what he has done so far for the franchise? It just makes absolutely no sense. That is my one main takeaway from this whole list is Nick Sirianni should not be number 2. If you want to have him 10, fine. But on the hottest of coaching hot seats, Nick Sirianni number 2, that's just insane for me. Just no. There is no way that, again, even with a 3-14 record, 3-14, 4-12, whatever, there's no way that Nick Sirianni should be that high up when it comes to being fired and having a hot seat. I do not believe that for 1 second. And finally, my one story away from the NFL this week, and it's the Winter Olympics. It's curling. I'm pretty sure everyone is in the same boat. We love curling for every 4 years. I wish it was a sport that was more prominent and I could watch it on a weekly basis. I would absolutely love to watch curling on a weekly basis. I love it. I want to I want to take part in it. I've told the story many times. I wanted to train and be one when I grew up, but the nearest curling centre to me was 3 hours away back in the UK, so that dream was pretty much died straight away. But the controversy surrounding the Canada's men's team and the Fingergate, I believe it's called, absolutely, it is one of those things that you only really know about it, or know how important it would be if you actually pay this much attention to the sport and if you're in it. But the fact that it's caused so much controversy, because I'm looking at it and thinking, he's already pushed off the curling. Just Google Canada finger curling gate, whatever you need to do. But he's already thrown or laid or whatever, hurled the stone away. How much difference is it really making if he's just given that little push in the grand scheme of things? It's just absolutely fascinating, and the reaction surrounding it all has been absolutely just brilliant, dramatic TV to watch. It's been brilliant, as has been the vast majority of the Winter Olympics, but that has been the one story that has taken my mind this week, and that is all that we have time for this week. Surprisingly, I did say this was going to be a short show, but we've sort of hit round about the time that we're normally done with it, maybe even a little bit longer than some of our ones. So, as always, I end the show the same way by thanking you very much for listening. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, do whatever it is that you need to do to help the podcast grow. Don't forget to check us out on our other socials. We are at Borden Sports Media on Instagram and TikTok, at MLB Sports Media on Twitter. So give us the relevant likes and subscribes and follows there. And to be sure to check out our other stuff. If you're returning or if you're new, thank you very much for listening and making me a part of your week. We will hopefully be back next week with plenty more to discuss. If not, then again, as I hinted at last week, we may turn this into a fortnightly endeavour, but don't worry, I will be back soon talking more NFL. And until next time, take care, and as always, stay safe.